Mayor's back.
If you're not here, put your hand up. Thank you. Right, that's good. Right. Agenda item 12, our favourite part of the council meeting, motions to the council. I know we all look forward to this part of the council meeting. I can see by your faces. So what I'd like to say is, can we be respectful for everybody's opinions? Sometimes we can't always agree on everything, and it's nice to be able to, shall we say, disagree as well without causing problems. I just remind people that one item did cause a lot of upset before, so show respect to one another, respect one another's views on the topic. And like I say, let's have motions we can debate, discuss, without getting, shall we say, animated and upset and pointing fingers. Okay, so now to agenda item 12A, motions to the council. The mover and seconder have up to 10 minutes between them. The proposer and seconder of the amendment also have up to 10 minutes between them. All of the contributions are up to 3 minutes per councillor. I now call on Councillor Copley to speak to the motion.
Sorry, could I just clarify, was that 3 minutes, not 10 minutes split? Sorry, or was that 3 minutes in the debate? I didn't quite understand. I've got up to 10 minutes split, yeah. Sorry, apologies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I've mentioned previously at a number of previous meetings, we all know that irreversible climate breakdown is underway, with the impacts being felt disproportionately by communities in the global south. And I will today be talking about the urgent need to promote and normalise predominantly plant-based diets. And the first reason for that is their disproportionate contribution to climate and ecological breakdown. It's increasingly recognised that the meat and dairy production is a significant contributor, and the livestock sector accounts for 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions, as well as being a major contributor to global deforestation. Of all the mammals on Earth, 60% are livestock, 36% are humans, and only 40% are the remaining wild mammals. We're currently undergoing the 6th mass extinction, of which the food systems that we use as humanity are a major cause. Plant-based diets have a substantially lower impact in terms of emissions, land use, and water use. Secondly, the livestock industry is a human rights issue. The meat industry relies on people not being able to see how it operates, with indigenous people's land being stolen or destroyed in countries such as Brazil, and cattle ranches and meat packing facilities are known hotspots for modern slavery, with working conditions being dire, particularly during the coronavirus pandemic. 2 weeks ago, I was speaking to a man who'd travelled to Europe from a small country which I won't name in order to create a better life for himself. And he took up work in a slaughterhouse, but he didn't have any ability to take copy of paperwork or knowledge that that was important. And he was dismissed a few months later without ever being paid for the long hours and difficult work that he'd done. Thirdly, the livestock industry also represents a huge food waste issue. There's a metric which is called the food conversion ratio, which is the amount of feed that is required to create a certain amount of edible meat. It varies a lot based on the animal and how the animal is produced, but for beef cows, which is the worst example, it comes out as 16 to 25 times the weight of meat that you get. That means that were you to eat an 8-ounce or a 225-gram beef steak, that's 3.5 to 5.5 kilograms of food that had to be produced for you to then have that meal. So it may feel like there's not much food waste involved, but actually that's what's behind it. And it's a problem in the UK as well, where we're feeding 60% of our cereals to livestock and only 40% to people. And this is going to be particularly a problem when we look at the likely consequences of preventing further catastrophic climate breakdown. Climate and risk experts predict a world with systemic cascading risks related to food insecurity, including food shortages, societal tensions, hunger and malnutrition, unrest and conflict. This was from a Chatham House report last year. This also predicted a 50% chance of synchronous crop failure in the decade of the 2040s. So this is something that's going to be affecting a large majority of people in this room, and certainly any children, nieces or nephews that we may have related to us, as well as the predominantly all young people in the world today. And a food shortage is likely to be the first way that people are aware of just how catastrophic climate breakdown is. And it's very difficult to justify such a high proportion of our finite ability to make food to be devoted to the livestock industry as we go forwards. And finally, the livestock industry is an animal rights issue. Many of us might describe ourselves as animal lovers, but choose not to see the animal rights abuses inherent in the meat industry, nor the impact on wild animals and ecosystems. There's therefore an urgent need to transition to and normalise predominantly plant-based diets. Over 40% of Britons are trying to reduce their meat consumption, and 14% already follow a flexitarian diet. Plant-based food options are not consistently available at all events or food venues, even though plant-based foods are cheaper on average, as well as being healthy and nutritious. And therefore, the food offerings by local government and work by local government is an excellent place to start to give residents plant-based healthy food options. In this motion, I'm asking councillors to vote to transition council meetings with catering to be fully plant-based. You may have noticed as well that the lunch today, the plant-based options disappeared, and the leftovers, there are, I believe, no plant-based leftovers. I'm also asking the council to cost up using civic events as a platform to promote plant-based food options, including with an educational component, i.e. cost up to civic events to be fully plant-based, and also to ensure that there are plant-based options at all City Council run events, events on City Council open spaces, and at City Council kiosks and cafes. So this is the majority of places where the City Council has direct control over what happens. And I would just finally like to thank all members in the Chamber in advance should they choose to support this motion, and in particular thank Councillor Collis for her work with Cambridge Sustainable Food and for her amendments, and to share my support for the campaign for Cambridge to be awarded gold status by Sustainable Food Places. And I'd also like to thank the many other groups who are working towards food justice locally, including Transition Cambridge for their work to help people gain confidence in gardening, keeping allotments and making use of underused space and preserving food making skills as a community. And finally, irrespective of the outcome of this motion, let us all become loud ambassadors and advocates for plant-based food in every group, community, council partner and sphere of influence that we find ourselves in. There are so many ways that we can promote plant-based food, and I'd really like this to be a start of conversation and work by all of us, both directly and with our partners. And plant-based food is the future, and let's make it happen now.
Councillor Howard, I understand you are to second the motion. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I would like to reserve my right, please.
You would have 3 minutes 40 seconds when you come to speak.
Thank you.
Councillor Collis has given notice of an amendment which is on page 19 of the information pack. I understand that Councillor Carling is the seconder. You have 10 minutes between you. Councillor Collis.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking Councillor Copley for bringing this motion and stressing that our amendment is intended as a fully supportive one, basically broadening out to emphasise current work and future plans on sustainable food. I particularly welcome the thinking behind her suggestions on how we can rejig our contracting process to encourage more plant-based provision. The impact of diet and how we produce our food is a really important issue and absolutely something that we should be debating as a council. While the council itself has relatively little in terms of direct provision of food, unlike say the county which provides school meals, we can still make a change that has an impact on our environment. We can lead by example and we can certainly raise awareness. And as Councillor Copley has pointed out, this is a central part of our commitment to becoming a net zero council. It has to be. I've spoken about this in council before, As Councillor Copley points out, our food system is broken and it's almost completely unsustainable. Food miles, water consumption that rack up at a frightening rate when we should be thinking local and seasonal. I can still remember at Food Cycle one year making a Christmas Eve strawberry cheesecake. Strawberries in December, and no, they didn't taste much like strawberries at all. When he launched the National Food Strategy in 2021, Henry Dimbleby argued that changes to the national diet needed to include a 30% reduction in meat consumption by 2032 from, I think it was 2019, in order to meet health, climate and nature commitments. Our current appetite for meat is unsustainable, his report said. 85% of total land that produces UK food is used to graze livestock or produce crops to feed to animals, and we need some of that land back. There has to be a change at national and international levels, and you might well ask yourself what difference one small district council can make. Actually, as Councillor Copley has correctly identified, we can make quite a big difference. We already punch well above our weight on food sustainability, and there's quite a bit that we already do. Not just partnering with Cambridge Sustainable Food and supporting excellent initiatives like Co-Farm in Councillor Copley's ward. And by the way, I think every member in this chamber, if they haven't been already, should visit Co-Farm, and you might even get to meet Biscuit, the resident fox. CSF recently undertook a review of sustainable food at council-run events to look at the work that's already being done and where we might want to make some changes. So city events like the Big Weekend, music events at the Corn Exchange, private events and conferences held here in the Guildhall. And of course the Folk Festival, which has a long-standing focus on sustainability. The Folkie has a well-established set of non-negotiable terms and conditions which relate to sustainability for food traders and caterers. They're required to provide a green deposit of £50 to make sure they stick to our terms and conditions, and we do check as well. Vendors are asked to minimise travel emissions, no single-use plastic is allowed, and when it comes to food, our terms and conditions state that all coffee, tea, cocoa and chocolate must be fair trade, and eggs and egg products free range. Only British meat which is reared in a sustainable environment or sustainable fish is allowed, and all labelling has to show sustainability evidence. There's a focus on local produce and drinks. Menus at council-run cafes like Clay Farm and the Meadows have been developed in line with the council's sustainable food policies. The cafe at Parkside Pool as well currently offers plant-based milks and vegetarian and vegan options. Community services are currently leading a tender for a cafe provider for the New Meadows Community Centre, and they've already included a requirement within that specification that any food offer has to contain a good mix of plant products and focus on reducing the volume of meat products sold. We do need to pay attention to some of the economic implications here. There are some issues around cost. For example, an average meal at the cafe at Parkside currently costs £2 to £3. If it was required to be solely plant-based, officers tell me this would increase to approximately £8 to £9. Our events do need to make money, and if we were to accept only plant-based caterers, it would cause us a significant challenge. But plant-based doesn't have to mean more expensive. Clearly there's something here about sort of supply not meeting demand, because the demand for meat and dairy alternatives has doubled in value in 4 years. This is the future. I mean, I absolutely agree that wherever viable, plant-based should be the default option. We should lead by examples wherever we can, like with council meetings, not that a lot of catering is involved, so a warning to new councillors, today's buffet is not the norm, so don't get too excited. It's not going to happen overnight, which is why we talk about beginning the transition, but it is past time, I agree, that we make a change and we acknowledge the environmental impact of our food system. So thank you once again to Councillor Copley for bringing this important issue before Council, and I urge all members to support our amendment in the spirit in which we've proposed it. Thank you.
Would Councillor Carling like to speak now or reserve their right?
I'll reserve my right.
You'll have 3 minutes and 5 seconds when you speak. Is there any debate? All right. Can you get the names down? Councillor Shield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations, Mr. Mayor. Well done. Good work. So glad to support this for the sake of the animals and for our fight against climate collapse. Thank you.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. I just think I have to declare an interest since it's been mentioned so many times. 2 of my children work at the cafe at Parkside Pools, so I don't know if that... Councils, cafes within the swimming pools. How's that?
Councillor Thornborough?
Yes, I would like to thank Councillor Copley for bringing this motion and the amendment proposed by Councillor Collis. This is so important, and everything that's been said, we must listen to because of the situation we are regarding the environment. But I just want to mention that as well as moving away from meat-based diet, we need to move away from seafood-based diet. The fish industry is causing a collapse of our fish in the sea. My understanding is and that's of the fish that we know, there's a huge proportion of fish that we don't know about, and we have no, and there is real fears that that is on the verge of collapse as well. And the temperature in the sea is rising more quickly than air temperatures, so it's a complete disaster. So moving away from fish is really important, but there is also terrible human rights abuse involved with the seafood production, and that would help for that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Holt?
Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to thank Councillor Copley for bringing forward this motion. So we declared a climate emergency. We had our climate change training. So now we must put our money where our mouths are, literally, except of course that plant-based options are often cheaper than meat. Councillors have a real opportunity here to lead by example. This motion is in line with our goal to be carbon neutral by 2030. Food consumption is one of the areas where individuals, such as we as councillors, can make a real difference, next to travel and energy consumption. The effects of meat and dairy consumption on climate change are clear, as outlined by previous speakers here. I am one of the 40% of Britons trying to reduce their meat consumption, and I see this motion as a welcome opportunity to get some inspirations from future council meetings. I will look forward even more to them in the future, on how to do even better with my food consumption in the future. As Liberal Democrats, we want to enable everyone to make their own individual choices by providing education and information, and where appropriate, recommendations and guidelines. And it is clear from this motion that choice will still be available at public events. Most, if not all, public events already provide some plant-based food options. For example, the ubiquitous veggie burger, but of course we can and should do better. The motion codifies this and emphasizes the Council's strong commitment to this cause across all parties, as we've just heard. We would welcome charities and other organizations to Council-organized events to inform the public about their food choices. We agree, though, that it is justified to restrict choice at civic council meetings. The Council has a responsibility to lead by example, and I myself don't come to the Council to feast. I had a very moderate amount of meat on my plate today. We see an opportunity here to promote local food producers, but it is not always clear that locally produced food has the lowest carbon footprint. So we hope that this motion is the start of the Council assessing all the food it serves so people can make an informed choice to reduce their environmental impact, whether or not they are vegan or vegetarian. There is, however, a danger to this kind of campaign. It should not lead to finger pointing or shaming of those who occasionally opt for a beef burger or kebab. Food choice has to be seen as part of a bigger mix of options to reduce our carbon footprint. One veggie burger doesn't offset a return flight to Australia. We are also generally supportive of the amendment put forward by the Labour Group. We fully support the Going for Gold campaign. However, given the fact that we are in a climate emergency, we think that the Executive Councillor should commit to a clear time frame for the costed report to the Environment and Community Scrutiny Committee. Otherwise, it is just another thing they are asking us to take on trust. We will therefore abstain from the vote on the amendment, but support the motion. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Goldfoot to speak, and I've got no other speakers indicating afterwards, apart from the seconders.
Well, I think I have to declare an interest in this as someone who has to do a food diary and who has diabetes. That means that I have to keep my diet as low carb and as low sugar as possible. It does limit me with things like root vegetables. I'm also a diver, so I'm very conscious that when I eat fish, it's got to be MCS certified. And I think that's something that I would hope we will be looking into. But it's not always as straightforward. I have to avoid processed food if I can. These foods are, as have been indicated with Parkside, can often be awfully expensive, and we do have to think about food justice. And we also have to think about, you know, whether the sustainability, and that's what this is about. So it's just that we have to think about these things. The people who have to keep to a low carb, no sugar diet. I can't eat most fruit. I can't eat plant-based milks because they've got too much sugar in. But I fully support this amendment, this motion, and with the amendments. Thank you.
I now go to the seconders. Councillor Howard, 3 minutes 40 is what your time limit is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for receiving me into the chamber. It's great to be here, and yes, thank you. I welcome very strongly the broad support of this motion that Councillor Copley has brought, and I'm thankful to the Executive Councillor for Open Spaces, Food Justice and Community Development for all of the pieces that have been mentioned. I would, however, like to ask, if we are so supportive, why do we still need to amend, even in only a small amount, to remove a deadline and to use that word begin, as Councillor Collis mentioned and as has been mentioned by Councillor Hawke? I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but at the risk of it sounding like it's been said 100 times, the transition is here. We are no longer in trying to avoid catastrophe. And that might sound like a doomerish statement, or it might sound apathetic or futile, but we are seeing the temperatures, see the temperatures in India and Pakistan, see the situation in Ukraine, which has removed land from use for useful food, at least in the short term. We're starting to see the consequences of our collective human success, because it is a success. We have dominated the planet, and we are going to, unfortunately, pay the price. And as Councillor Collis has has seen that will fall on those least able to cope with it and also on the global south. So I'm really appealing to the ruling group here when you are discussing these issues and tweaking the motions, have a think, would this motion have come without a green voice here? And do you really need to be on the side of tweaking or amending? The most ardent activists might see this motion, oh great, Cambridge City Council are going to change a small amount of food to plant-based, fantastic. And I can see how there's a criticism, even in the weakness of the motion, to criticise our own motion. But the point is, this is a symbolic motion, as you have rightly pointed out across the chamber. And the fact that even then the deadline has been removed and the word beginning has been added is symbolic of our collective denial of the seriousness of the situation. I know we've all heard the numbers before. Councillor Copley has explained those proportions from different types of food and the severity of the climate crisis as it sweeps across the planet in many times before. But I think if you're really being honest with yourself, look at where you are in that cycle of despair. Have you gone through the real pain of what is going to happen to the planet and to collective human civilization? And I'll point, just to finish, to the work of Jem Bendell, who's a very renowned professor of climate science, and came through the conclusion that we are going to go over the edge, and that what we need to do is best adapt ourselves to insulating from the worst effects of the coming crises, multiple breadbasket failures, more social unrest, and the hammer falling on those least able to cope with it. So please, I beg you to move for the motion unamended and have the courage that many Amazonian tribes have when they are fighting to defend the Amazon against land grabbers and the meat industry, which we indirectly support, even just by having an apparently innocent McDonald's in Market Square. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Allen, for keeping just slightly over the time in your first appearance in the chamber. Much appreciated. Councillor Collis, Councillor Carling, the right to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Collis outlined earlier, this council already has a track record that we can be proud of on food sustainability and has shown clear leadership in this area. I think it's right that we acknowledge that in this motion today, which is one of the reasons we are proposing this amendment. Councillor Howard has discussed how this motion has symbolic implications, and it does, but motions must also be feasibly actionable, and that's also our aim by this amendment. In our climate, I for one am incredibly proud to be joining a council with our record and to be able to speak in my very first meeting here in support of taking that further. In our climate change strategy launched last year, we set out 6 key objectives for how we would address the causes and consequences of climate change. The 5th of those was promoting sustainable food. Point 5.5 in the accompanying action plan set out our commitment to encourage residents to choose sustainable, local food and to reduce meat consumption through communications messages. In October of last year, we also signed up to the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration. We are already taking action, but we can't just stop here. This is no time to rest on our laurels. Taking decisive action to reduce meat and dairy consumption is absolutely vital, and that is why I welcome this motion and our amendment. As Sustainable Food Cities noted in their online piece, Editing Our Planet, on how local campaigns can help, public food procurement is a good place to start. The UK spends over £2 billion every year providing meals in schools, hospitals, prisons, and many other public bodies. This spend could be aligned to wider objectives around environmental outcomes, encouraging healthy eating and supporting local suppliers, especially small and medium enterprises. At the local level, a campaign can encourage caterers and the out-of-home sector to serve less and better meat with the highest environmental and animal welfare standards, while giving preference to local, seasonal and fairly traded products. Some of this we already do, but we can definitely do more. Obviously, we don't have anything like that spend, but we can make a difference locally. We can support small and minority enterprises and social enterprises, as Councillor Copley suggests. We can not only encourage the serving of less and better meat, but go even further still by choosing plant-based food as the default option and promoting it wherever we can. As others have picked up, we must lead by example on this. It is not about restricting choice, rather we are encouraging people to make better, more sustainable choices. We simply can't afford not to, and that is why I urge Council to support this amended motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carlin. You still had a bit of time left, but not to worry. Now, Councillor Collis and Councillor Copley have the right to reply 3 minutes. Councillor Collis.
I'm just going to say one thing, Mr Mayor, in response to something Councillor Howard said about this being a symbolic motion. We're a City Council responsible for delivering services to residents, so I'm interested in workable motions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Copley.
Thank you, Mayor. Am I allowed to ask a question to Councillor Collis to get a response? No. Okay. Sorry. No.
No,
okay.
you just have 3 minutes to right to reply. It's not question time.
Okay.
Could I say, outside the chamber, you can go and speak. That's not a problem whatsoever. But yeah.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just very, very briefly comment on the amendment which broadly is including really important topics and issues. I support all aspects of it, apart from the removal of the 6-month deadline, which I see as a mild weakening amendment. I just wanted to kind of clarify the reasons for the timing for that, but I'm confident that we all agree this is a good motion and the substantive parts of it. So I just thank everybody for the debate and the support of the, what's the word? The substantive parts of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Copley. And it was remiss of me, as in my speech about what I used to do in a previous life. I'm still an authorised meat inspector, so I don't think I were going back to the occupation, but for the records, I suppose it should be shown that there is an interest, so that can be registered. I will now go to the vote on the amendment, please. Can I see those in favour?
Okay, that's 23.
Can I see those against?
That's 1.
Any abstentions?
That's 9.
Now we move to the vote on the motion as amended. Those in favour?
That's 32.
Those against?
None.
And any abstentions?
None.
So the motion as amended is carried. Thank you for all you keeping to respecting one another in that debate. And now we move on to agenda item 12B, motion to the council. The mover and the seconder have up to 10 minutes